Chapter 1. The auction block. The rain had turned the cobblestones black and slick, reflecting the torchlight like scattered embers. Elara held her daughter tighter against her chest, feeling the child's heartbeat flutter against her own ribs, a small, desperate rhythm that matched the terror climbing her throat. The marketplace had emptied hours ago. Now only shadows remained, and the men who dealt in them. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the abandoned merchant hall. His eyes were flat, businesslike. He'd sold grain that morning. Now he sold women. Young mother, healthy child. No family to claim them. No debts beyond what's owed to the crown. Elara's legs trembled. The baby, barely 6 months old, made a small sound against her shoulder, and she rocked instinctively, whispering nonsense comfort into the fine dark hair. Her own hair hung in damp tangles around her face. 3 days since her husband's execution. 2 days since the crown seized everything they'd owned. 1 day since the bailiffs had dragged her here and told her the king's justice included selling traitors' wives to recoup the cost of the rope. She'd stopped crying somewhere around midnight. Now she just felt hollow. Opening bid? The auctioneer's gaze swept the room. There were perhaps a dozen men present. Merchants, she thought. Landowners. 1 or 2 whose clothes were defined, whose stillness was too perfect. She didn't look at them directly. Some instinct old as bone warned her not to meet their eyes. 50 silver. A voice called from the back. 60. Another countered. The baby stirred, and Elara adjusted her grip, her arms aching. She'd been standing here for hours while they processed the other lots. Women whose husbands had died owing money. Girls whose fathers had sold them to settle debts. The auction block didn't discriminate. It simply consumed. 80 silver. This voice was different, cold, measured, with an accent she couldn't place. Old world, perhaps. Continental. She couldn't help it. She looked. He stood apart from the others, near the far wall, where the torchlight barely reached. Tall, dressed entirely in black, with pale hands clasped loosely before him. His face was angular, beautiful in the way cathedral statues were beautiful, carved from something harder than flesh. Dark hair fell to his collar. His eyes, even from this distance, seemed to catch the light and hold it. Something in her chest went tight and strange. 100. Another bidder called. Breaking the moment, the man in black didn't move, didn't react. But something in the room shifted, a pressure change, like the air before a thunderstorm. 200 silver, he said quietly. The auctioneer's hand froze mid-gesture. The other bidders went silent. Even the guards by the door seemed to hold their breath. That's the auctioneer cleared his throat. That's quite generous, my lord. Are you certain? 300? The man stepped forward into the light. His face was expressionless, but his eyes found Elara's across the room and held them. And I'll pay in gold. The baby began to cry, a thin, exhausted wail that cut through the silence. Elara bounced her automatically, her mind struggling to process what was happening. 300 gold. That was a fortune. That was enough to buy a house, a title, a small army. And no one paid that much for a traitor's widow and her child. The auctioneer's smile was nervous, greedy. Sold then. To Lord Cassius. The man moved toward the platform with inhuman grace, each step precise, deliberate. Of House Noctis. Elara's blood went cold. She'd heard that name. Everyone had. House Noctis was one of the old families, the kind people whispered about in taverns and made signs against in doorways. They owned land across 3 kingdoms. They attended no courts, paid no taxes, answered to no throne. They were vampires. The stories said so. The church said so, and she'd just been sold to one. Cassius reached the platform. Up close, he was even more unsettling, to pale, to still, to beautiful. His eyes were dark gray, like winter clouds, and when he looked at her daughter, something flickered across his face too quickly to name. The child, he said. What's her name? Elara's voice came out raw. Sira. Sira. He repeated it softly, almost to himself. Then his gaze shifted to Elara. And you? Elara. She lifted her chin, even as her arms shook. Elara Thorn. Not anymore. He held out one gloved hand. You're both under my protection now. That name is a death sentence. You'll need another. She stared at his hand. The leather was black, expensive. His fingers were long, elegant, deadly. I didn't agree to this, she whispered. No, his voice was soft, almost kind. But you're out of options. The king wants you dead. The church wants you burned. And every man in this room wanted you for purposes I won't name in front of your daughter. He kept his hand extended. I'm offering you a third choice. Take it. The baby's crying had subsided to exhausted hiccups. Ilara felt the weight of every eye in the room, the cold creeping through her thin dress, the impossible choice that wasn't a choice at all. She took his hand. His grip was firm, cool, even through the glove. He pulled her down from the platform with surprising gentleness, and she stumbled, her legs numb from standing. He caught her elbow, steadying her, and for a moment they stood too close. She could smell him winter air, old parchment, something darker underneath. Can you walk? He asked. She nodded. Then come. We leave tonight. He guided her toward the door, one hand at her back. The other bidders parted like water, their faces carefully blank. The auctioneer counted his gold with shaking hands. The guards didn't move. Outside, the rain had stopped. A carriage waited in the courtyard, black lacquer, pulled by black horses, with a crest on the door she didn't recognize. Cassius opened it himself, handing her up with the same careful courtesy. You'll be safe, he said, as she settled onto the velvet seat with Sira in her arms. Both of you. I give you my word. Alara looked at him, at this vampire lord who'd bought her for a fortune, who spoke softly and moved like death, whose eyes held centuries she couldn't begin to understand. Why? She asked. Why would you do this? For a moment, he was silent. Then he climbed into the carriage beside her and closed the door. Because, he said quietly, as the driver cracked the whip and they lurched forward into the darkness, I know what it's like to lose everything. And because that child deserves a father. And you deserve a choice. The carriage rolled through the gates. Behind them, the auction house faded into shadow. Ahead, the road stretched long and dark toward House Noctis, toward whatever came next. Chapter 2. The House of Shadows. The journey took 3 hours, though it felt like falling through time itself. Ilara dozed against the carriage wall, Sira heavy and warm in her arms, and woke to find dawn threatening the eastern horizon, a thin line of gray that never quite brightened into morning. The carriage slowed. She straightened, her neck stiff, and looked out the window. Her breath caught. House Noctis rose from the hillside like something carved from midnight. Black stone, towers that clawed at the sky, windows dark as closed eyes, walls thick enough to withstand sieges wrapped around courtyards she couldn't see. Iron gates stood open, flanked by stone sentinels, worn faceless by centuries of weather. It should have looked abandoned. Instead, it looked patient. We're here, Cassius said quietly. He hadn't slept. She'd felt him watching her in the darkness, though every time she'd opened her eyes, his gaze had been fixed on the window. The sun will rise soon. We need to get inside. The carriage rolled through the gates and stopped in a courtyard paved with stones so old they'd been worn smooth as river rock. Cassius stepped out first, then turned to help her down. His hand was steady, cool, and she realized he'd removed his gloves sometime during the ride. His skin was marble pale in the pre-dawn light. This way, he guided her toward a heavy wooden door, one hand hovering near her back without quite touching. Carefully. The steps are uneven. She climbed them, her legs shaking with exhaustion and fear. Sira had woken and was watching everything with solemn, dark eyes. To quiet for a baby, to still. Alara whispered to her, meaningless comfort, and pushed through the door Cassius held open. The entrance hall stole her breath. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Tapestries older than kingdoms lined the walls, their colors faded to ghosts of crimson and gold. A staircase curved upward into darkness, its banister carved with symbols she didn't recognize. Candles burned in iron sconces, dozens of them, hundreds maybe, filling the air with the scent of beeswax and something else. Old incense, ancient wood, everything was immaculate. Not a speck of dust, not a cobweb, but it felt empty, profoundly, achingly empty. How many people live here? Ilara asked, her voice small in the vast space. Currently? Cassius closed the door behind them, and heavy locks clicked into place. 2, now 4. She turned to stare at him. Just you? And my steward, Marcus. He manages the household. Cassius moved past her toward the stairs, his footsteps silent on the stone. The others come and go. House members, allies. But they don't live here. Not anymore. There was something in his voice, something old and tired and carefully controlled. She wanted to ask what had happened, why a house this size held only one vampire and his servant, but Sira chose that moment to start fussing. Cassius stopped on the 3rd step. She's hungry. I know. I haven't been able to feed her properly since Alar's throat closed. Since they'd arrested her, since they'd taken everything. There's a nursery prepared. He continued up the stairs, expecting her to follow. And a wet nurse arriving within the hour. I sent word ahead. Alara climbed after him, her mind reeling. A wet nurse. He'd arranged for a wet nurse before he'd even bought her. How did you know that you'd need one? He glanced back, his face unreadable in the candlelight. I saw you at the auction, Alara. I saw how thin you are, how exhausted. Your milk's already failing, isn't it? Heat flooded her cheeks, shame and anger and something else she couldn't name. That's none of your concern. Everything about you is my concern now. He said it simply, without arrogance. You're mine, both of you. That means I'm responsible for keeping you alive. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they settled over her shoulders like a cloak, heavy, smothering, but warm. They reached the second floor. The hallway stretched in both directions, lined with closed doors. Cassius led her left, to a suite of rooms at the far end. He opened the door, and lamplight spilled out. The nursery was beautiful. A cradle carved from dark wood sat near the fireplace, already made up with soft blankets. A rocking chair, a changing table, shelves lined with supplies, cloths, oils, powders. Everything new, everything ready. When did you? Alara stepped inside, staring. You couldn't have done this in 3 hours. I didn't. Cassius remained in the doorway, not quite crossing the threshold. I've been preparing these rooms for weeks. The floor seemed to tilt. Weeks? But you couldn't have known. I knew the crown was selling off traders' families. I knew they'd taken a woman with an infant. His voice was careful, measured. I've been watching the auction houses, waiting. For me specifically? For anyone who needed help. He looked away, toward the window where dawn was threatening the curtains. For anyone I could save. The honesty in his voice was worse than any lie would have been. Alara sank into the rocking chair. Syrah clutched against her chest and felt something crack inside her ribs. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you care? She couldn't say it. Couldn't say the word. A monster? He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Yes, I am. But monsters. Remember what it's like to be human. Some of us remember too well. Before she could respond, footsteps sounded in the hall. A man appeared behind Cassius, older, gray-haired, wearing a steward's dark uniform. His eyes were kind, human, and deeply tired. My lord, he said quietly. The wet nurse has arrived. And sunrise is in 10 minutes. Cassius nodded. Show her up, Marcus. And prepare the adjoining room for Alara. He finally looked at her again, and something in his expression softened. You'll sleep there. Close enough to hear Syrah, but with privacy. A lock on your door if you want it. A lock? Alara repeated numbly. I told you you deserve a choice. He stepped back into the hallway. This is your home now, Alara, not your prison. Learn the difference. He turned to leave, Marcus already retreating down the hall. But Alara called after him. Cassius. He paused, half-turned, the candlelight catching in his dark hair. Thank you, she said. The words felt inadequate, impossible. For saving us. For a long moment, he was silent. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Don't thank me yet. You don't know what I've brought you into. He disappeared into the shadows, Marcus following. And she heard a distant door close as the first rays of sunlight touched the eastern windows. The house settled into stillness. Alara sat in the rocking chair, her daughter sleeping against her heart, and wondered what she'd traded one death sentence for. Chapter 3. The watching horse. Alara woke to silence so complete it felt like drowning. She sat up gasping, disoriented, her hand reaching automatically for Syrah before remembering the wet nurse. Marcus had brought a woman named Helen, soft-voiced and capable, who'd taken the baby with gentle authority and promised to wake Alara if needed. That had been hours ago. Maybe days. Time felt strange here. She rose from the bed, her body aching with the kind of exhaustion that sleep couldn't quite touch. The room Marcus had prepared was smaller than the nursery, but no less carefully appointed. A 4-poster bed with heavy curtains, a wardrobe filled with dresses in dark, rich colors all her size, though no one had measured her. A writing desk by the window. The window. She crossed to it, pulling back the curtain. Night, full dark, with stars scattered like broken glass across the sky. The courtyard below was empty, lit by torches that burned without flickering. Beyond the walls, she could see the outline of a forest, ancient trees that seemed to lean toward the house as if listening. How long had she slept? A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Come in," she called, her voice rough. Marcus entered, carrying a tray. "Good evening, Lady Elara. I've brought you supper." "Evening?" She stared at him. "What time is it?" "Just past 9. You slept through the day." He set the tray on the small table near the fireplace. Bread, cheese, cold chicken, wine. Real food. Her stomach twisted with hunger. "The baby is well. Helen is with her now. She's been fed and changed and is sleeping peacefully." Elara sank into the chair, her hands shaking as she reached for the bread. "Thank you. And please just Elara. I'm not a lady. Lord Cassius insists otherwise." Marcus moved to stoke the fire, his movements efficient, practiced. "You're under his protection. That makes you nobility by house law, whether you claim the title or not." She took a bite of bread, trying to process this. House law? The old laws. The ones that govern relations between vampire houses and their dependents. He chose the word carefully. "You and the child are registered now as members of House Noctis, protected, provided for. No one can touch you without answering to Lord Cassius." The bread turned to ash in her mouth. "Registered where?" "With the Night Court, the governing body of the vampire houses." Marcus straightened, meeting her eyes. "Don't look so frightened. It's for your protection. The crown can't reach you here. The church can't reach you. You're safe." Safe. The word felt foreign, impossible. She'd spent 3 days expecting death, and now this stranger in a house of shadows was telling her she was safe. "Where is he?" she asked quietly. "Cassius?" "In his study. He wakes at sunset and usually works through the night." Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. "He asked me to tell you that you're free to explore the house. All of it. There are no locked doors save his private chambers and the wine cellar." "The wine cellar?" Something flickered across Marcus's face, too quick to read. "The wine cellar is not for you, my lady. Trust me on this." He left before she could ask what he meant. Elara ate mechanically, her mind racing. When the food was gone, she rose and moved to the door, opened it. The hallway stretched dark and quiet, lit by candles that seemed to burn without consuming their wax. She should stay in her room. Should check on Syrah, then sleep more, then wake tomorrow and try to understand this new reality. Instead, she started walking. The house revealed itself in pieces. A library with shelves reaching toward shadowed ceilings, filled with books in languages she couldn't read. A music room with instruments under dust covers, a piano, a harp, something stringed and ancient she didn't recognize. A portrait gallery where painted eyes followed her movement, beautiful faces rendered in oils that had cracked with age. All of them had the same quality. The same marble pale skin. The same ageless, hungry beauty. Vampires. Every single one. She found herself in front of a door at the end of the east wing. No different from the others, but something pulled at her, an instinct she didn't understand. She knocked softly. "Come in," Cassius's voice, muffled by wood and distance. She opened the door. The study was smaller than she'd expected, lined with books and maps and papers covered in dense handwriting. A desk sat before a window that looked out over the forest. Cassius stood there, his back to her, one hand braced against the glass. He didn't turn. "You should be sleeping." "I slept all day." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Marcus said I could explore." Marcus talks too much, but there was no anger in his voice. "Are you settling in? Is the room acceptable?" "It's more than acceptable. She struggled for words. "Why are you doing this?" "Don't say it's because you remember being human. That's not enough. No one spends this much, arranges this much just out of sympathy." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned, and the candlelight caught his face. He looked tired. Actually tired, in a way she hadn't thought vampires could be. "You're right," he said. "It's not just sympathy." "Then what?" He moved to the desk, pouring dark liquid from a crystal decanter into a glass. Wine, she thought. Except it was too thick, too dark. Her stomach turned as she understood. Blood. He saw her reaction and smiled faintly. "Animal blood. Deer, mostly. I haven't fed from a human in 3 decades. He took a sip, and something in his shoulders relaxed. "Does that help? Knowing I'm not a complete monster?" "You haven't answered my question." "No, I haven't." He set the glass down, his fingers drumming once against the wood. 10 years ago I had a family. Not human vampire. A wife, a son. They were killed in a house. War, politics, betrayal. All the usual reasons immortals slaughter each other." His voice was flat, empty. "I survived. They didn't. And every night since, I've wondered what I'm supposed to do with eternity when everyone I loved is gone." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things she didn't know how to name. "So you save strangers?" she asked softly. "That's your purpose now?" "It's something." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. "And you're not a stranger, Alara. Not anymore." Before she could respond, a sound shattered the quiet, glass breaking. Somewhere distant, shouting. Marcus's voice raised in alarm. Cassius moved faster than sight, crossing the room in a blur. "Stay here," he commanded, already through the door. But Alara was running too, her heart hammering, one thought screaming through her mind. Sira. Chapter 4. Blood and ash. Alara reached the nursery 3 steps behind Cassius, her lungs burning, terror clawing at her throat. The door hung open, splintered at the hinges. Inside, Helen stood pressed against the far wall. Sira clutched to her chest, her face white with terror. Between them and safety stood a man. No, not a man. A vampire. He was younger looking than Cassius, with golden hair and eyes like chips of amber. Beautiful and terrible. His lips were pulled back in a smile that showed too many teeth. And his clothes, expensive velvet and silk, were splattered with something dark. Blood. Fresh blood. "Cassius?" The intruder's voice was pleasant, conversational. "Still playing house, I see. How? Domestic." "Lucian." Cassius moved into the room with predatory grace, positioning himself between the intruder and the women. "You're trespassing. Leave. Now." "Trespassing?" Lucian laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "In what used to be my family's hunting grounds? I think not." His gaze slid past Cassius to Alara, and something hungry flickered in his expression. "You've been busy. A human pet and her whelp. House Margrave will be fascinated." The name hit Alara like a physical blow. House Margrave. Even she'd heard of them, the rival house, the ones who'd warred with House Noctis for centuries, the ones who, according to whispered tavern gossip, had nearly destroyed them. "They're under my protection," Cassius said softly. "Registered with the Night Court. You can't touch them." "Can't I?" Lucian tilted his head, bird-like. "The Night Court is weakened, Cassius. You know this. Half the old houses are gone. The other half are choosing sides." He took a step closer, and Cassius mirrored him, maintaining the distance. "House Margrave is offering generous terms to those who surrender their territories. Join us. Bring your pretty humans. We'll even let them live. Get out. Or what? You'll fight me?" Lucian's smile widened. "You're strong, old friend. But you're alone. One vampire against an entire house. How long do you think you can protect them?" The air in the room changed, became thick, electric. Alara felt the hair on her arms stand up, felt something ancient and terrible building in the space between the 2 vampires. Then Cassius moved. She didn't see it happen. One moment he was standing still, the next he had Lucian by the throat, slammed against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. His hand was pale against the other vampire's neck, fingers pressed into flesh that should have bruised, but didn't. "I said," Cassius whispered, and his voice was nothing human. "Get out." Lucian struggled, his hands clawing at Cassius's arm, his face contorting with rage. "You'll regret this." House Margrave doesn't forgive. Cassius threw him. Actually threw him, like he weighed nothing, sending him crashing through the doorway into the hall. Lucian hit the far wall and crumpled, then rose with inhuman speed. His blood trickling from his mouth. "Tell House Margrave," Cassius said, stepping into the hallway, "that House Noctis still stands. And anyone who crosses my threshold uninvited will leave in pieces." For a moment, Lucian stared at him. Then he smiled, a terrible, promising smile. "As you wish. But know this, Cassius, the old laws are dying. The Night Court is dying. Soon, there will be only strength." He glanced past him to where Alara stood frozen in the nursery doorway. "And when we come for her, you won't be able to stop us." He was gone between one breath and the next, moving too fast for human eyes to follow. The window at the end of the hall stood open, curtains billowing in the night wind. Silence crashed down like a wave. Cassius stood utterly still, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched into fists. Then, slowly, he turned. His eyes met Alara's, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Fury and fear and guilt all mixed together. "Are you hurt?" His voice was careful, controlled. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. He moved past her into the nursery, his movements suddenly cautious, almost gentle. Helen? The wet nurse was shaking, but she straightened, adjusting her grip on Sierra. We're unharmed, my lord. He didn't touch us, just stood there, watching. Marcus? Cassius called, his voice carrying through the house. The steward appeared moments later, breathing hard, a cut above his eye bleeding sluggishly. I tried to stop him, my lord. He came through the kitchen entrance. I didn't even see him until. It's not your fault. Cassius's jaw tightened. How did he get past the wards? I don't know. They should have held. They've held for years. Cassius was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. Then, House Margrave has a ward breaker. They must have. We need to strengthen the protections. Triple them. I want blood wards on every entrance, Marcus. Mine and yours, my lord. Blood wards require. I know what they require. Cassius turned back to Helen. Take the child to my chambers. The inner room. No windows. No outside walls. You'll both stay there tonight. He looked at Alara. You too. I'm not hiding, and this isn't a request. His voice was steel. House Margrave just declared war. They know you're here. They know you're human. They know you're vulnerable. He stepped closer, and she saw the fear bleeding through his control. They will come back, Alara, and next time, they'll bring more than one vampire. The weight of it settled over her, the reality of what she'd walked into. She wasn't just in a vampire's house. She was in the middle of a war. Why? She whispered. Why do they care about us? We're nothing to them. You're not nothing. Cassius's hand lifted, almost touching her face, then dropped. You're mine. And House Margrave has been trying to destroy everything I have for centuries. They killed my family. They took my territories. Now they know I've claimed you and Sierra. His voice went soft, dangerous. So they'll try to take you too. To prove they can. To break what's left of me. Alara stared at him, at this ancient creature who'd bought her freedom and was now promising to fight an entire house to keep her safe. It was insane. It was impossible. It was the first time in her life anyone had stood between her and the world. What do we do? She asked. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe, or hope. We prepare, we fortify, and we pray the Night Court intervenes before House Margrave decides to end this permanently. He turned to Marcus. Get started on the wards. I'll help after I've secured them. As Marcus hurried away, Cassius gestured toward the door. Come. My chambers are in the North Tower. 3 flights up, stone walls, only one entrance. The safest place in the house. Alara took Sierra from Helen, cradling her daughter close, and followed Cassius into the dark hallway. Behind them, the shattered nursery door swung on broken hinges. Ahead, the stairs wound upward into shadow, and somewhere in the night, House Margrave was gathering its forces. Chapter 5. The tower room. Cassius's chambers occupied the entire top floor of the North Tower. The main room was circular, dominated by a massive fireplace and lined with bookshelves that curved with the walls. A desk sat near one window, papers weighted down with stones. Another doorway led to what Alara assumed was his bedroom. She could see the edge of a bed frame. Dark wood carved with intricate patterns. He directed Helen to a cushioned alcove with Sierra, then moved to secure the heavy door, sliding 3 separate bolts into place. The sound of metal on metal echoed in the quiet. There's no other way in? Alara asked, her voice tight. One window in my bedroom. 40 feet straight down to stone courtyard. No ledges, no handholds. He crossed to the fireplace, coaxing the embers to life with practiced efficiency. Even a vampire would think twice before attempting that climb. Helen settled into the alcove, rocking Sierra gently. The baby had somehow slept through everything, the shouting, the violence, the flight up 3 flights of stairs. Now she made small, peaceful sounds against the wet nurse's shoulder. Alara stood in the center of the room, her arms wrapped around herself, trembling with adrenaline. She couldn't release. How long do we have to stay here? Until dawn, at least. Margrave vampires hunt at night. Cassius straightened, brushing ash from his hands. After sunrise, we'll reassess. Marcus will have the blood wards in place by then. Blood wards. She repeated the term, trying to understand. You use your blood to protect the house? Mine and Marcus's. And yours, if you'll allow it. He met her eyes. A blood ward keyed to the residence makes it nearly impossible for hostile vampires to cross the threshold. It burns them, repels them. The more blood sources, the stronger the ward. The thought of giving blood, of binding herself to this house in some mystical way she didn't understand, should have terrified her. Instead, She found herself nodding. If it keeps us safe, yes. Something in his expression softened. Thank you. An awkward silence fell. Helen hummed quietly to Sira, and the fire crackled, and Alara felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders like stones. You should rest, Cassius said. The alcove has cushions enough for you and Helen both. I'll keep watch. Will you sleep at all? I don't need much. An hour before dawn, perhaps. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. Vampires don't sleep like humans do. We drift between consciousness and something else. She wanted to ask what that something else was, but Helen spoke first, her voice hesitant. My lord, if I may, where should I change the baby? I'll need water and cloths. There's a washroom through there. Cassius gestured to a door Alara hadn't noticed, partially hidden behind a bookshelf. Everything you need should be stocked. If not, there's a bell pull. Marcus will hear it. Helen rose carefully, Sira in her arms, and disappeared into the washroom. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Alara alone with Cassius. The silence felt different now, heavier, charged with things neither of them was saying. Alara moved to the fire, holding her hands out to the warmth, and felt him watching her. You're angry, he said quietly. I'm terrified. She didn't look at him. And yes, angry. You said we'd be safe. You said the crown couldn't reach us here. I said the crown couldn't reach you. I never promised you'd be safe from my world. His voice was tight with something that might have been shame. I should have warned you. Should have told you about House Margrave before I brought you here. Would it have changed anything? She turned to face him. Would I have refused? Gone back to the auction block? Let Sira starve while I burned as a traitor's wife? No. He stepped closer, and the firelight caught in his dark eyes. But you would have known what you were walking into. You would have had the truth. The truth. She laughed, sharp and bitter. The truth is, I had 3 choices: death, slavery, or you. And you were the only one who offered me anything resembling mercy. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. So tell me the truth now, all of it. What does House Margrave want? Cassius was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Then, revenge, territory, power, all the usual things immortals kill each other for. He moved to the desk, bracing his hands against the wood. 200 years ago, House Noctis controlled half the northern territories. We were one of the strongest vampire houses in existence. Then House Margrave started a war. Over what? A human woman. His voice went flat. My wife. Before she was turned, she was human. Margrave's patriarch wanted her. I refused to give her up. So he killed her, killed my son, burned our holdings, slaughtered our allies. He looked up, and the pain in his face was ancient, terrible. By the time the Night Court intervened, House Noctis was decimated. I survived. A handful of others survived. Everyone else died. Alara's breath caught. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago, but his hands were white-knuckled against the desk. The point is, House Margrave has been waiting for a chance to finish what they started. And now I've given them one. By claiming you and Sira, by registering you with the Night Court, I've shown them I still have something to lose. So this is my fault. The words tasted like ash. No, he crossed to her in 3 strides. And suddenly he was close enough that she could feel the unnatural coolness radiating from his skin. This is my fault. For being selfish. For bringing you here when I knew. He stopped, his jaw tightening. I knew they were watching. I knew they'd see it as weakness. But I couldn't what? Couldn't let them sell you. The words came out rough, almost angry. Couldn't let some merchant or lord buy you and your daughter like cattle. Couldn't walk away knowing what would happen to you. His hands lifted, hovering near her shoulders, then dropped. I told myself it was mercy, charity. But the truth is I wanted to save you. Needed to. Because if I could save one person, just one, maybe it would mean something. Maybe I'd be more than just a survivor waiting to die. The admission hung between them. Raw and honest and terrifying. Alara stared at him, at this vampire who'd lived centuries and lost everything and somehow still had enough humanity left to care about a stranger and her child. Her throat felt tight. You did save us, she said softly. Whatever happens next, you did that. Something in his expression cracked. For a moment, he looked younger, vulnerable in a way she hadn't thought vampires could be. Then he stepped back, rebuilding his walls, his control. Get some rest, he said. Dawn's still hours away. I'll wake you if anything happens. He turned back to the window, his posture rigid. and she knew the conversation was over. Alara moved to the alcove, curling up on the cushions near where Helen sat with Sira. The wet nurse had returned from the washroom, the baby clean and drowsing. She handed Sira to Alara without a word. Alara held her daughter close, feeling the tiny heartbeat against her chest, and stared at Cassius's silhouette against the window. He stood there like a statue, watching the darkness for threats that might not come until tomorrow, or the next night, or never. But when they did come, she realized, with a strange, fierce certainty, he would stand between them and her daughter until they tore him apart, and somehow, impossibly, that mattered. Chapter 6. Blood and binding. Dawn came like a held breath finally released. Alara woke to pale gray light filtering through the tower window and the sound of Cassius moving quietly across the room. She sat up, her neck stiff from sleeping in the alcove, and found him standing at the door, speaking in low tones with Marcus. Completed the outer wards an hour ago, Marcus was saying, but they'll need reinforcement. Blood from all residents, as you said. I know. Cassius glanced back at Alara, something unreadable in his expression. Let her wake properly first. Then we'll explain. Marcus nodded and withdrew. Cassius closed the door and turned to face her fully. He looked tired, actually tired, with shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there last night. Did you sleep at all? Alara asked. An hour. Maybe less. He moved to the fireplace, adding wood to coals that had nearly died. House Margrave didn't return. But they will. Tonight, tomorrow night. They're patient. Helen stirred in the alcove, Sira cradled against her. The baby was awake, making soft cooing sounds, her dark eyes tracking the movement of dust in the morning light. What happens now? Alara stood, stretching her cramped muscles. Marcus mentioned blood wards. Yes. Cassius straightened, his hands clasped behind his back, a formal posture that made him seem even more distant. I need to explain how they work, what they'll require from you. He paused. And what they might mean. Something in his tone made her uneasy. What do you mean? What they might mean? He gestured to the chairs near the fire. Sit, please. This will take a moment. She settled into one of the chairs, and he took the other, though he perched on the edge as if ready to flee at any moment. Helen tactfully moved to the washroom with Sira, giving them privacy. Blood magic is old, Cassius began. Older than the vampire houses. Older than the night court. It's what we're built on, literally. Our existence is sustained by blood. Our power flows through it. Our bonds are sealed with it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. A blood ward uses that connection to create a barrier. Your blood, mixed with mine and Marcus's, keyed to the threshold of this house. Any vampire not tied to those bloodlines will feel it like fire. That doesn't sound complicated, Alara said slowly. Why do you look like you're about to tell me something terrible? His jaw tightened. Because blood magic has consequences. Once your blood is mixed with mine in a ward, we're connected, not fully bonded. That requires intent, ritual, drinking, but connected enough that I'll be able to sense you. Your fear, your pain, strong emotions. The room felt suddenly smaller. You'll feel what I feel. Echoes, impressions. He met her eyes. And you might feel mine. It's rare for humans, but it happens. Especially if the vampire is old, powerful. The blood remembers, Alara. It recognizes connection. She sat back, her mind racing. And if I refuse? If I don't want that connection? Then the wards will be weaker. And House Margrave will eventually break through. His voice was gentle, but the truth in it was hard. I won't force you, but I need you to understand what we're facing. Lucian was a scout, one vampire, testing our defenses. When they come in force, they'll bring 10, 20. I can fight them, but I can't fight them all while protecting you and Sira. So my choices are, let you into my head, or watch House Margrave tear through this house and kill us all. Yes, he didn't flinch from the accusation in her voice. I'm sorry. I wish there was another way. Alara stared at the fire, watching the flames dance over the new wood. Everything in her screamed to refuse to maintain what little autonomy she had left. But Sira's face floated in her mind. Sira, who deserved to grow up, who deserved better than to die because her mother was too proud to accept help. If I agree, she said slowly, what happens? Walk me through it. Relief flickered across his face. Marcus has prepared the ward site at the main entrance. We'll go there together. I'll make a small cut on your palm, barely more than a pinprick. Your blood will mix with mine in a bowl of salt and ash. I'll speak the binding words. Then we'll seal the mixture into the threshold stone. He paused. You'll feel it. Take hold. A pull. Like a hook behind your ribs. It fades after a few minutes, and then you'll be able to feel me. My emotions. Only the strong ones. Terror, rage, joy. Not everyday feelings. He hesitated. And only when you're in the house or on the grounds. Beyond the property line, the connection fades. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. What about Syrah? She's too young to consent to this. Her blood will be included, but the connection only forms with adults. She'll be protected by the ward, but not bound to it. His voice softened. I would never tie a child to blood magic. Not unless her life depended on it, and she was old enough to understand. Alara studied him, this vampire who spoke of consent and protection and old magic like he was discussing weather. Who'd killed his own kind last night to keep her safe. Who looked at her daughter with something almost like longing. You miss them, she said suddenly. Your wife, your son. His hands clenched on his knees. Every night. How old was he? Your son. 7. By human years. 43 by vampire reckoning. A sad smile crossed his face. He loved books, languages. He could speak 12 before he died. Was learning a 13th. The smile faded. House Margrave burned him in his sleep. He never woke up. The grief in his voice was so raw, so present. It could have happened yesterday instead of 2 centuries ago. Alara felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't imagine. Don't. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. Don't pity me. I've had 200 years to carry this. I'm not fragile. But he was. She could see it in the rigid line of his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the windowsill. He'd survived losing everything, and now he was trying desperately not to lose anything else, even a stranger and her daughter. I'll do it, Alara said. The blood ward. Whatever it takes to keep Syrah safe. He turned, and something blazed in his eyes, gratitude and guilt mixed together. You're certain? No, she stood, crossing to him. But I trust you. I don't know why, but I do. The admission hung between them, dangerous and true. You shouldn't, he said softly. I'm a vampire, Alara. I've killed. I've fed on humans. I've done things that would turn your blood cold. Maybe. She held his gaze. But you also spent a fortune to save me. You prepared a nursery for a baby you'd never met. You stood between me and Lucian without hesitation. She took a breath. So, yes, you're a vampire. But you're also the only person who's ever put my daughter's life before their own interests. That means something. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. You're going to break my heart, Alara Thorne. Before she could respond, Marcus knocked at the door. My lord, everything's ready when you are. Cassius straightened, rebuilding his composure like armor. Come, let's get this done before House Margrave decides to test our hospitality in daylight. He held out his hand. After only a moment's hesitation, Alara took it. His skin was cool, smooth, strong. He led her toward the door, toward blood magic and binding and consequences she couldn't fully understand. But as his fingers tightened around hers just slightly, as if afraid she'd pull away, she realized something that should have terrified her. She didn't want to let go. Chapter 7. The binding main entrance hall felt different in daylight, less shadowed, but no less imposing. Marcus had cleared a space before the threshold, arranging candles in a circle around a shallow stone basin. The air smelled of salt and something darker, earthier. Ash, Alara realized. And herbs she couldn't name. Helen waited near the stairs with Syrah, far enough away to avoid the ritual, but close enough to watch. The baby was awake, alert, her dark eyes tracking everything with unsettling focus. We'll start with you, Cassius said to Alara, his voice formal now, ritualistic. Then Marcus. Then the child, just a few drops. Nothing that will hurt her. Alara nodded, her throat too dry for words. Marcus handed Cassius a small silver knife, ornate and very old. The blade caught the morning light streaming through the windows, throwing reflections across the stone walls. Your hand, Cassius said gently. She extended her right hand, palm up. Her fingers trembled slightly. Cassius took her hand in his, cradling it with unexpected tenderness. His thumb brushed across her palm once, and she felt the coolness of his skin, the strength in his grip. It will hurt, he warned. But only for a moment. I know. She met his eyes. I'm ready. The knife was sharp, sharper than anything she'd felt before. It sliced across her palm in one clean motion, and pain bloomed bright and immediate. Blood welled up, dark red against her pale skin. Cassius turned her hand over the basin, and her blood dripped into the mixture of salt and ash below. 3 drops, 4, 5, enough. He pressed a clean cloth to her palm, applying pressure. His other hand went to his own wrist, and before she could blink, he'd drawn the knife across his skin. His blood was darker than hers, thicker. It fell into the basin with a sound like rain, and where it touched her blood, something happened, a shimmer, a spark. Like oil catching fire, the air in the room changed. Alara gasped, feeling it a pull deep in her chest, exactly as he'd described. Like a hook lodged behind her ribs, tugging gently toward Cassius. Not painful, just present, insistent, easy. His hand tightened on hers. Breathe through it. It will settle. She forced herself to breathe, slow and steady, as Marcus stepped forward and added his own blood to the basin. The pull intensified briefly, then spread, becoming less focused. A web instead of a line. Helen brought Sierra forward, and Cassius took the baby with practiced gentleness. Just a pinprick, he murmured, more to Sierra than anyone else. You won't even remember it. He pricked the baby's heel so quick and careful that Sierra barely whimpered and let a single drop fall into the basin. Then he handed her back to Helen and turned to the mixture. By blood we bind, he said, his voice resonating with power that made the candles flicker. By salt we seal, by ash we ward. Let no enemy cross this threshold. Let no harm pass these walls. Let those who bear this blood find sanctuary here. He dipped his fingers into the basin, coating them with the mixture, then pressed his hand to the threshold stone. The stone seemed to drink the blood, absorbing it until no trace remained on the surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pull in Alara's chest yanked hard, stealing her breath. She stumbled, and Marcus caught her elbow, steadying her. Hold on, Cassius said, still pressed to the stone. His eyes were closed, his face tight with concentration. Almost the sensation crested like a wave, then broke. Suddenly Alara could feel the house around her, not physically, but as a presence, a boundary, a shield, and threaded through it all, 2 distinct points of awareness, Cassius, Marcus. She could feel them, not their thoughts, not their words, but their essence. Cassius was ice and iron and barely leashed violence. Marcus was warmth and weariness and unwavering loyalty. It should have been invasive, terrifying. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in invisible armor. Cassius removed his hand from the threshold and swayed slightly. Marcus moved to support him, but the vampire waved him off. I'm fine. It takes more energy than it used to. He looked at Alara. How do you feel? Strange. She flexed her bandaged hand. I can feel you. Both of you. Is that normal? For a blood ward this strong? Yes. He crossed to her, studying her face with concern. Does it hurt? No, it's just. She struggled for words. It's like knowing someone's in the room without seeing them. An awareness. That will fade over the next few hours. Settle into background noise. He turned to Marcus. Reinforce the other entrances. Every door. Every window. I want this place sealed tight. Yes, my lord. Marcus bowed and departed, leaving Alara and Cassius alone with Helen and Sierra. The baby had fallen asleep in Helen's arms, exhausted by the morning's events. The wet nurse looked pale, but composed. My lord, should I return to the nursery? Not yet. Cassius moved to the window, peering out at the courtyard. Keep her in the tower rooms for now, until we know the wards are holding. Helen nodded and retreated up the stairs, leaving them truly alone. Alara sank onto the bottom step, suddenly exhausted. The cut on her palm throbbed in time with her heartbeat, and the strange awareness of Cassius pressed against her consciousness like a gentle weight. Are you all right? He turned from the window, his expression concerned. I don't know. She looked up at him. This is real, isn't it? I'm really bound to you now. To this house. Only partially. The ward can be broken if you choose to leave. He moved closer, stopping a respectful distance away. You're not a prisoner, Alara. You were never a prisoner. But if I leave, I lose the protection. Yes, she laughed, sharp and bitter. So I'm free to go, as long as I don't mind being hunted by House Margrave. I'm sorry. The words were simple, honest. I wish I could offer you safety without strings. But this is the world I live in. The world you're part of now. Alara studied him, this vampire who'd bound her to his house, to his blood, to his war. who looked at her with guilt and longing and something else she couldn't quite name. And then, without warning, she felt it, his emotion. Not her own. His .it crashed over her like a wave, grief so deep it had no bottom. Loneliness that stretched across centuries, and underneath it all, a desperate, aching hope that terrified him more than any enemy. She gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Cassius, he went very still. You feel it, don't you? The grief. She couldn't finish. The intensity was overwhelming. It will fade. His voice was tight, controlled. You're still adjusting to the bond. It's amplifying everything, but it wasn't fading. If anything, it was growing stronger. And she realized with a start that she wasn't just feeling his emotions. He was feeling hers, her fear, her exhaustion, her strange, impossible gratitude toward this creature who'd saved her. And beneath it all, buried so deep she'd barely acknowledged it, herself, the tiniest spark of something that might have been trust, or could become it. Given time, their eyes met across the entrance hall, and the air between them felt charged, dangerous, like standing too close to lightning. This wasn't supposed to happen, Cassius said quietly. The bond wasn't supposed to be this strong. Why is it? I don't know. He looked away, his jaw tight. Maybe because you're mortal and I'm old. Maybe because, he stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter. We'll learn to block it, to shield. And if we can't? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly she almost missed it, then we'll be more vulnerable to each other than either of us intended. Before she could respond, a sound shattered the silence, a howl, distant but unmistakable. Animal and not animal. Hungry. Cassius's head snapped toward the window. They're here. In daylight? House Margrave is desperate. He moved to the door, his body already shifting into combat readiness. Or they've brought something that can hunt in sun, through the bond. Elara felt his fear spike, not for himself, but for her, and she realized, with a cold clarity that stole her breath, that she felt the same. Chapter 8. Fire and Faith. Howl came again, closer this time, and Elara's blood turned to ice. Get to the tower, Cassius commanded, already moving toward the door. Take Helen and Syrah. Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marcus. What is that thing? Elara's voice came out steadier than she felt. Dampier. Half vampire, half human. They can walk in daylight. His hand was on the door bolt. House Margrave breeds them as hunters. There the window exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the entrance hall like deadly rain. Elara threw up her arms, feeling shards slice her skin, and when she looked up, a figure crouched in the window frame. It looked almost human, almost. Pale skin, dark hair, dressed in leather armor that had seen battle. But its eyes were wrong yellow, like a wolf's, with pupils that contracted to slits in the morning light. And when it smiled, its teeth were too sharp to many. Cassius of House Noctis. Its voice was rough, accented. House Margrave sends its regards. Cassius moved between Elara and the creature in a blur. There are laws. Even Margrave doesn't break the daylight accord. The accord is dead. Didn't you hear? The damper dropped into the hall, landing in a crouch. The Night Court dissolved 3 days ago. Civil war. Half the old houses are burning. It tilted its head, studying Elara past Cassius's shoulder. Which means there's no one to stop us from taking what we want. The Night Court dissolved. The words echoed in Elara's mind, but she had no time to process them because the damper lunged. Cassius met it mid-strike, and they collided with a sound like thunder. They moved too fast for Elara to follow, a blur of violence and inhuman speed. Furniture shattered. Stone cracked. The damper's claws raked across Cassius's shoulder, drawing blood that looked black in the morning light, through the bond. Elara felt his pain sharp and bright and quickly suppressed. She scrambled backward toward the stairs, her mind racing. The tower. She needed to get to the tower, to Syrah, but Marcus appeared on the landing above, his face grim, and she realized with horror that he was bleeding from a gash across his chest. There are more, Marcus gasped. 3 more dampier in the east wing. The wards are holding them at the doors, but they're testing the windows. Another crash. The door to the east hallway splintered, and a second dampier forced its way through, smoke rising from its skin where it touched the threshold. It screamed rage and pain mixed and kept coming anyway. Marcus. Cassius's shout was desperate. Get her out of here. But Marcus was already moving, grabbing Elara's arm and hauling her up the stairs. Behind them, Cassius fought both Dampier now, his movements graceful and deadly, but even she could see he was being pushed back. They won't kill him, she thought wildly. They'll just keep him busy while the others Syrah, she gasped, and Marcus nodded grimly. They reached the second floor at a run. Helen's scream echoed from the old nursery, the one with the shattered door. Alara's heart stopped. She tore free from Marcus and ran. The nursery door hung open. Inside, Helen had backed into a corner, Syrah clutched to her chest, while a third Dampier circled them like a predator. This one was female, smaller than the others, with white blonde hair and eyes that gleamed with cruel intelligence. Just the baby, the Dampier said pleasantly. Hand her over, and we'll let you live. No, Helen's voice shook, but she didn't move. You'll have to kill me first. That can be arranged. Alara didn't think. She grabbed the fire poker from the cold hearth and swung it with every ounce of strength she had. The iron rod caught the Dampier across the back of the skull with a sickening crack. The creature stumbled, hissing, and spun to face her. Blood redder than vampire blood, darker than human trickled down its neck. Marcus appeared in the doorway behind Alara, a sword in his hands. Get back. But the Dampier was already lunging at Alara, claws extended, murder in its yellow eyes. Alara swung the poker again, catching it across the face. This time, the creature shrieked, and she felt bones break under the impact. Through the bond, she felt Cassius's rage spike, felt him fighting harder, trying to reach her. Terror flooding through him like ice water, the Dampier recovered faster than anything human should. It backhanded Alara, and she flew across the room, hitting the wall hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Stars exploded across her vision. Through them, she saw Marcus step forward, sword raised. The Dampier caught the blade mid-swing and snapped it like kindling. Stupid humans, it snarled. Did you really think? Fire exploded across its back. Helen stood behind it, holding a burning oil lamp. She'd smashed it over the creature's shoulders, and now flames licked across its leather armor, catching in its hair. The Dampier screamed a sound that barely sounded alive and spun toward her. Alara forced herself up, her ribs screaming in protest, and grabbed the broken sword from Marcus's hand. The blade was jagged now, sharp as any knife. She drove it into the Dampier's back with everything she had. The creature went rigid. Dark blood bubbled from its mouth. It turned its head, looking at Alara with something that might have been surprise, and then collapsed. Silence crashed down. Alara stood over the body, the broken sword still clutched in shaking hands, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Helen was crying, Syrah wailing in her arms. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, pressing a hand to his bleeding chest. From downstairs, she heard more fighting, crashes, shouts. Then, finally, silence. Cassius appeared in the doorway seconds later, covered in blood his and theirs. His eyes found Alara immediately, scanning her for injuries. And through the bond she felt his relief slam into her like a physical force. You're hurt, he said, crossing to her into strides. I'm fine. She let the sword clatter to the floor. Syrah, safe. Helen lifted the baby, showing her. Crying but unharmed, Cassius's hands hovered over Alara's shoulders, not quite touching, as if afraid she'd break. You killed it. We killed it. She looked at Helen, who nodded shakily. Is it over? Are they gone? The other two retreated when this one died. But they'll be back. His jaw tightened. Alara. The night court, I heard. It's dissolved. She met his eyes. What does that mean? It means there's no authority to enforce the old laws. No one to stop House Margrave from doing whatever they want. He looked down at the dead Dampier, his expression grim. And it means we're running out of time. Time for what? To decide whether we run or we fight. Marcus pushed off the doorframe, wincing. My lord. We can't run. Not with a baby. Not with House Margrave hunting us. And we can't fight an entire house. Cassius's hands clenched into fists. Not alone. Then find allies, Alara said. The words came out before she'd thought them through, but once spoken, they felt right. You said there are other houses, other vampires. Someone must oppose Margrave. They're all choosing sides in the civil war, or hiding. Cassius shook his head. No one will risk themselves for what? For you? For us? Alara stepped closer, ignoring the pain in her ribs. You saved me because you couldn't stand by and watch. Maybe there are others like you. Others who remember what the old laws meant. What honor meant. Through the bond, she felt something shift in him, surprise, giving way to something that might have been hope. You're Suggesting I call in old debts, he said, slowly. I'm suggesting you stop trying to protect us alone. She held his gaze. You told me I wasn't a prisoner, that I had choices. Well, this is mine. I choose to fight. For Syrah, for this house, for whatever future we can build. Cassius stared at her, and for a moment, she saw past his control, his walls, his centuries of grief. She saw him, just him, vulnerable and desperate and clinging to the last shred of hope he had left. If I do this, he said quietly, if I call them, there will be a price. There's always a price. Then we'll pay it. She touched his arm, feeling the coolness of his skin through torn fabric. Together, his hand covered hers, just for a moment. Then he nodded. Marcus, send word to House Corvus and House Silvanus. Tell them Cassius Noctis is calling in blood debts to centuries old. Marcus bowed and hurried from the room, leaving them in the wreckage of the nursery, with a dead Dampier and a crying baby and the terrible knowledge that everything had just changed. The war had come to their doorstep, and they were going to meet it head-on. Chapter 9, Alliances and Ashes. The allies arrived at dusk. Alara watched from the tower window as two carriages rolled through the gates, one midnight blue with silver wolves emblazoned on the doors, the other deep green with a tree worked in gold thread. House Corvus and House Silvanus. She'd spent the day learning their names, their histories, while Marcus tended her bruised ribs, and Cassius prepared the great hall for guests who might become enemies. They won't hurt you, Cassius had promised that afternoon. But his hands had been restless, uncertain. The blood debt is binding. They owe me their lives. But vampires are proud, Alara. They'll see you as a weakness, a liability. Then I'll prove them wrong, she'd said. Now, watching the carriages stop in the courtyard, she wasn't so sure. Cassius appeared beside her, silent as smoke. He'd changed into formal clothes, black coat with silver buttons, dark trousers, his hair pulled back. He looked every inch the ancient lord, cold and beautiful and dangerous. Are you ready? He asked. No, she smoothed her borrowed dress, deep burgundy, elegant, borrowed from some long-dead lady of the house. But I'll manage, through the bond. She felt his worry, his fear. Not for himself, for her. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I can meet with them alone. Keep you and Syrah hidden. No, she turned to face him. You said I could choose. I choose to stand with you. To show them I'm not just some helpless human you're protecting. She took a breath. I killed a Dampier today, Cassius. I'm stronger than they think. Something fierce and proud flashed across his face. Yes, you are. He offered his arm, formal and courtly, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. They descended the stairs together. The great hall had been prepared for war council. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs. Candles burned in iron chandeliers overhead, casting dancing shadows across stone walls hung with faded tapestries. Marcus stood near the door, his chest bandaged, but his posture military straight. The vampires were already waiting, two of them, a man and a woman, both standing with the unnatural stillness of their kind. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair despite his young face, and eyes like winter sky. He wore the midnight blue of House Corvus. The woman was smaller, dark-skinned, with black hair woven with silver thread, and eyes that shone gold in the candlelight. House Silvanus green draped her shoulders like a cloak. They both turned as Cassius and Alara entered, and the weight of their attention was like physical pressure. Cassius, the man spoke first. His voice, deep and accented, Norse maybe, or something older. 2 centuries since you called. I wasn't sure you still lived. Alive and inconveniently stubborn, Aldrich. Cassius guided Alara forward. Thank you for coming, both of you. The woman Silvanus tilted her head, studying Alara with unsettling intensity. This is the human? The one House Margrave once dead? This is Lady Alara Thorne, Cassius said, and his voice carried an edge of warning. Under my protection. Bound to House Noctis by blood ward and debt. A mortal in a vampire's war. Aldrich moved closer, circling them like a predator. Margrave must see her as an insult. A mortal woman and her child, claimed by the last of House Noctis. It would be amusing if it wasn't so dangerous. The danger is why I called you. Cassius released Alara's arm, but stayed close. House Margrave attacked us twice. They're using Dampier as day hunters. They're not following the old laws anymore, because there are no old laws. Silvanus spoke for the first time, her voice musical and sad. The night court is gone, Cassius. destroyed from within by houses who wanted power over peace. The civil war will burn for years, maybe decades, which is why we need to stand together. Cassius moved to the table, bracing his hands against it. House Corvus, House Silvanus, House Noctis, three of the oldest bloodlines still standing. If we form an alliance against Margrave? Aldrich laughed, sharp and bitter. They have 50 vampires and twice that many Dampier. We have. He gestured around the empty hall. What, 10 between us? 15 if we call in every favor? Numbers aren't everything, Alara said. 3 pairs of eyes snapped to her. She felt Cassius's surprise through the bond, his flash of pride and terror mixed together. The human speaks. Silvanus's smile was sharp. Tell me, child, what do you know of vampire wars? Nothing. Alara met her gaze, refusing to look away. But I know desperation. I know what it means to fight when you have everything to lose. She moved to stand beside Cassius. House Margrave thinks I'm a weakness. That loving something mortal makes Cassius vulnerable. Maybe it does, but it also gives him something worth protecting. A reason to fight that goes beyond territory and pride. Love? Aldrich's eyebrows rose. Already? How? Impetuous. I didn't say love. Heat flooded Alara's cheeks, but she held her ground. I said worth protecting. There's a difference. Through the bond, she felt Cassius's emotions spike something complicated she didn't have time to interpret. She has fire, Silvanus said thoughtfully. And she killed one of Margrave's Dampier today. Marcus told me. With a broken sword and help from a mortal wet nurse, Aldrich countered. That doesn't make her a warrior. No, Cassius's voice cut through the room like a blade. But it makes her brave. And brave allies are worth more than strong cowards. He looked between them. I'm calling in the blood debts. You both swore oaths to me 200 years ago. I saved your lives when Margrave's forces would have ended them. Now I'm asking you to repay that debt. Silence fell, heavy as stone. Aldrich moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. If we stand with you, Margrave will come for us too. Our houses, our territories, they're coming anyway, Cassius said quietly. You know this. The civil war won't spare neutrals. Eventually, everyone will have to choose a side, and you're asking us to choose yours. I'm asking you to choose survival. Cassius straightened. House Margrave wants to rule through fear, to remake the vampire world in their image brutal, lawless, where the strong devour the weak without consequence. If we don't stop them now, while they're focused on me, they'll grow too powerful to oppose. Silvanus turned from the table, her gold eyes thoughtful. What are you proposing? An alliance? A pact? A blood bond? Cassius's words fell into the room like stones into still water. The 4 of us. Our houses tied together by blood magic stronger than any ward. Attack one. You attack all. Kill one, the others know instantly and respond. Aldrich whistled low. That's old magic. Dangerous magic. If it fails, it won't fail. Cassius looked at Alara. I bound immortal to this house 3 days ago. The ward holds. The magic remembers, even if the courts have forgotten. Alara felt all eyes turn to her again, assessing, measuring. She lifted her chin, letting them look. Let them see she wasn't afraid. A blood bond requires consent from all parties, Silvanus said slowly. And a price. Blood magic always demands a price. I know. Cassius's jaw tightened. I'll pay it. Whatever it costs. Will you? Aldrich moved closer, his winter blue eyes boring into Cassius's face. Because the price for binding for houses isn't gold or territory. It's life force. Years. Maybe centuries. Depending on how strong we make it. He glanced at Alara. And if she's truly bound to you, truly part of House Noctis, as you claim, she'll pay part of that price too. The room went cold. No, Cassius's voice was flat, final. She's mortal. She doesn't have centuries to give. Then the bond will be weaker. Silvanus spread her hands. That's the law, Cassius. You can't shield her from the cost. If she's truly part of your house, she pays the price with the rest of us. Alara felt the weight of it settle over her, this choice she hadn't known she'd have to make. Give up part of her already short life to strengthen an alliance that might save them all. Or refuse, and watch that alliance crumble before it could form. Through the bond, she felt Cassius's anguish, his desperate desire to protect her even from this. But she'd meant what she said earlier. She wasn't helpless. How much? She asked quietly. How many years? Alara. No, Cassius started. How many? She repeated, looking at Silvanus. The vampire studied her with something that might have been respect. For a bond this strong? 5 years from each of us. For you? She paused. 10. Maybe 15. Mortality makes the price higher. 15 years. Elara was 23. That would leave her with perhaps 40 more, if she was lucky. 50. If she was blessed, Syrah would still have a mother, would still grow up safe, and House Margrave would burn. I'll do it, Elara said. Chapter 10. Dawn breaking. Absolutely not. Cassius's voice was ice and iron. And through the bond, Elara felt his rage not at her, but at the impossible choice she'd just made. It's not your decision, she said quietly. Like hell it isn't. He turned to Aldrich and Sylvanus. Find another way. There's always another way. There isn't. Sylvanus's voice was gentle but firm. You know the laws of blood magic, Cassius? A bond this powerful requires sacrifice from all parties. If the mortal refuses to pay, the bond will be weak. Margrave will break it within weeks. Then we don't form the bond. Cassius moved between Elara and the other vampires, protective even now. We fight without it. Find another alliance, another strategy, and die. Aldrich's words were blunt. You're human, her child, all dead within a month. Is that what you want? The silence stretched, terrible and heavy. Elara stepped around Cassius, ignoring his attempt to block her. I understand the cost, and I'm willing to pay it. Syrah deserves to grow up, to have a life beyond running and hiding. She looked at each vampire in turn. 15 years is a small price for that. It's not small. Cassius's hand caught her wrist, his grip gentle but desperate. 15 years is half your remaining life, Elara. You'll be 40 instead of 55 when I die? She met his eyes. I'll still see my daughter married, still meet grandchildren if I'm lucky. That's more than I would have had on the auction block. Through the bond, she felt his anguish crack open, raw and bleeding. Please, he whispered. Don't do this. I have to. She touched his face, feeling the coolness of his skin, the tension in his jaw. This is my choice, Cassius. You gave me that. Don't take it away now. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, slowly, his hand released her wrist. If we do this, he said, his voice rough, I swear to you I will protect Syrah with everything I have. She will want for nothing. She will be safe. Even if he stopped, unable to finish, even if you're gone sooner because of this. I know. Elara's throat was tight. I trust you. Sylvanus moved to the table, producing a ceremonial bowl silver, etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the candlelight. Then we begin. The ritual must happen before dawn. Blood bonds are strongest when forged between night and day. They gathered around the table, 4 figures in the candlelit hall. Cassius stood at the head, Elara to his right. Aldrich and Sylvanus flanked them. Marcus watched from the doorway, his face grave. By blood we bind, Sylvanus began, her voice resonating with power. 4 houses, 4 lines, 4 souls willing to sacrifice for alliance. She produced a silver knife, the same one Cassius had used for the ward. One by one, they offered their palms. Aldrich first, his blood falling dark and thick into the bowl. Then Sylvanus, her blood shimmering with gold undertones. Then Cassius, his hand steady even as Elara felt his fear through the bond. Finally, Elara, the knife bit deep, this time deeper than before. She gasped, and Cassius's hand caught her elbow, steadying her. Her blood flowed into the bowl, mixing with the others, and the liquid began to glow. The price, Sylvanus said. Do you all accept it freely? I do. Aldrich's voice was firm. I do. Sylvanus nodded. I do. Cassius's hand tightened on Elara's arm. I do. Elara's voice didn't shake, the glow intensified, filling the bowl, climbing up their arms like living light. Elara felt it enter her bloodstream, fire and ice mixed together, burning away something she couldn't name. Years, life force, the very essence of her mortality. She swayed, and Cassius caught her, pulling her against his chest. Through the bond, she felt him anchoring her, lending her strength, even as the ritual took its price. Let this bond hold until death, Sylvanus continued. Let no force break it. Let no enemy divide us. 4 houses stand as one. Attack one, attack all, they said together. The light exploded outward, filling the hall, and Elara felt the bond snap into place, not just with Cassius now, but with all of them. Aldrich's fierce loyalty, Sylvanus's ancient wisdom, Cassius's desperate love. The word echoed through the bond before he could stop it. before he could shield it, and Alara's breath caught as she understood. He loved her. This vampire who'd saved her, who'd fought for her, who'd bound himself to her in every way that mattered. He loved her, and the ritual released them, and they staggered apart, breathing hard. Alara touched her chest, feeling the new bonds settling alongside the old. 4 points of awareness now, instead of 2. It's done. Sylvanus looked older suddenly, wearier. The bond holds. House Margrave will feel at the moment they try to attack any of us. Good. Aldrich rolled his shoulders, testing his body. Then let them come. We'll be ready. But Cassius was looking at Alara, his eyes wide with something between horror and wonder. You felt it. What? Ah, yes. She stepped toward him, her legs shaky. I felt it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to. Don't apologize. She took his hand, threading her fingers through his. Not for that. Before he could respond, a sound shattered the night howls, dozens of them, coming from the forest. And beneath them, the sound of marching feet. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face grim. My lord, House Margrave is here. At least 30 vampires. Twice that many Dampier. They're surrounding the house. The allies came together instinctively, forming a line at the entrance hall. Through the windows, Alara could see torches approaching, a ring of fire closing in around House Noctis. They're testing us, Sylvanus said. Seeing if the alliance is real. Then let's show them. Cassius's voice was cold, deadly. He looked at Alara. Take Syrah and Helen. Go to the tower. Bar the door. Don't come out until no. He turned, staring at her. Alara, I'm part of this alliance now. Part of House Noctis. She moved to the table where Marcus had laid weapons, swords, daggers, iron bars blessed against the undead. She picked up a sword, testing its weight. I fought beside you once. I'll fight beside you again. You'll die, maybe. She met his eyes. But I'll die free. And Syrah will live. That's enough. Through the bond, she felt his emotions. War, terror, and pride, and that terrible aching love. Then slowly, he nodded. Stay close to me, he said. And when I tell you to run, I won't. Alara, I won't, she repeated. We stand together. That was the promise, wasn't it? Before he could answer, the door exploded inward. House Margrave poured through like a flood, vampires and Dampier mixed, moving with terrifying coordination. Lucian led them, his golden hair catching the torchlight, his smile sharp as knives. Cassius. He called over the chaos. Did you really think a blood bond would save you? We'll tear through your alliance like paper. Try it. Cassius's voice was utterly calm. And learn what happens when you threaten what's mine. The battle erupted. Alara lost track of time. There was only the sword in her hands, the burning in her lungs, the press of bodies around her. Cassius fought like something out of legend, fast and brutal and unstoppable. Aldrich and Sylvanus were equally terrifying, centuries of experience making them deadly. But House Margrave kept coming. A Dampier caught Alara's shoulder, claws raking deep. She screamed, spinning, and drove her sword up under its ribs. It fell, and another took its place. Her arms shook, her vision blurred. Through the bond, she felt Cassius's panic, felt him trying to fight his way to her. Then dawn touched the eastern windows. The vampires on both sides recoiled, hissing, retreating from the light. But the Dampier kept fighting, and Alara realized with horror that they were losing ground, being pushed back toward the interior, where darkness still held. Fall back, Cassius shouted. To the great hall. They retreated in fighting formation, leaving bodies behind. Dampier and 2 of Margrave's younger vampires. But Margrave had numbers, and numbers were winning. Alara stumbled on the stairs, and a Dampier grabbed her ankle. She kicked, frantic, and Cassius was suddenly there, tearing the creature off her and throwing it through a window into daylight. It shrieked as the sun caught it, burning. I told you to run, he growled. And I told you no. She gasped back, his expression cracked into something that might have been a smile. Stubborn human, stubborn vampire. Then the great hall filled with shadows. And Lucian stood before them, his face twisted with rage. Enough games, he raised his hand. And the remaining Margrave forces surged forward. This was it, Alara realized. The final stand. But as she lifted her sword, as Cassius moved to shield her, something impossible happened. The blood bond flared to life, not just between the 4 of them, but outward, extending like roots through the earth. And Alara realized with sudden clarity that blood called to blood. That the bond had reached out to every vampire and human in House Noctis's territory who'd ever sworn loyalty. Who'd ever been protected? Who'd ever been saved? The doors burst open. Humans poured in, farmers, merchants, guards who'd once served House Noctis. Behind them came vampires, old allies Cassius thought, lost, drawn by the blood. Call, dozens, scores, for House Noctis. Someone shouted, and the tide turned. Margrave's forces broke against the sudden reinforcements like water against stone. Lucian screamed orders, but his people were already fleeing, streaming out windows and doors into the deadly sunlight beyond. Within minutes, it was over. The hall fell silent except for ragged breathing and the crackle of flames where overturned torches had caught on tapestries. Cassius stood in the center of the carnage, blood on his face, his clothes torn. His eyes found Alara across the room, and the relief that flooded through the bond nearly dropped her to her knees. She ran to him, and he caught her, pulling her against his chest with a desperation that spoke of how close they'd come to losing everything. It's over, he whispered into her hair. It's over. You're safe, we're safe, she corrected, holding him just as tightly. Around them, the survivors began to gather. Aldrich and Sylvanus, bloodied but standing. Marcus, limping but alive. The humans and vampires who'd answered the blood call, looking dazed and uncertain. What happens now? Sylvanus asked quietly. Cassius raised his head, still holding Alara. Now we rebuild. House Noctis. The Alliance. The old laws. He looked down at Alara. Together, she met his eyes, seeing the question in them. The offer, immortality. He could give it to her, turn her, make her vampire, erase the 15 years she'd sacrificed. But as she looked around the hall at the humans who'd fought beside vampires, at the fragile alliance that had held against impossible odds, she knew her answer. I stay human, she said softly. For now, Syrah needs a mortal mother, and you need someone to remind you what it means to be human. For now, he repeated, and something in his voice made it sound like a promise. But when you're ready, when I'm ready, we'll talk about forever. She rose on her toes, kissing him gently. For now, we have time. That's enough. Through the bond, she felt his love, his gratitude, his fierce protectiveness settling over her like a cloak. Outside, dawn broke fully over House Noctis, painting the blood-stained courtyard in gold, and inside, surrounded by allies and enemies turned to ash, a mortal woman and an ancient vampire held each other and chose to build something new from the ruins of the old world. The end.